My name is Tess Marlo, 35 years old. The snow on Delaware Avenue hissed against my window like a warning, thin needles drawn across glass. I had the phone pressed to my ear, shoulder aching with the effort to sound bright. "Hey, Mom," I said, because habits have muscle memory. "How's Hawaii planning going? I can resend the itinerary if—" A pause, the kind that isn't static but a decision. "Oh," she said, voice flat as a receipt. "We already went last week. Only for family." The words didn't hit so much as a race. For a heartbeat, there was no living room, no couch, no snow, just the void that follows a closed door. Only for family. Like a stamp over my name. My mouth worked before my thoughts lined up. You went. You went without me. A clink, ice in a glass, or a spoon on the counter. "It was simpler," she said. "You've had a lot going on. We didn't want to burden you." She said burden like I was a sensitive instrument that couldn't take pressure, not the person who had wired $22,000 for flights, a beachfront hotel, snorkeling tours, even a ridiculous luau because I thought, foolishly, that hula could glue fractures. The line clicked, my father taking the extension from somewhere in their apartment, breath heavy. "We'll show you pictures," he offered, too quickly, the way people toss a towel over a spill. "Pictures," I repeated, and found my voice sliding into a lower register that scared me with its steadiness. "You used the card I gave you?" Another pause. "It was already paid for, wasn't it?" Mom said, as if I were the unreasonable party in a math problem. "No need to make this dramatic, Tess. Only for family." I ended the call because I could feel the part of me that still wants to bargain sharpening its teeth. The room came back slowly. The lamp with its leaning shade, the radiator clanking like old bones, the buffalo night wearing its gray like a bruise. My laptop lay open on the coffee table, half a spreadsheet glowing. I slid it toward me and pulled up my bank records because numbers are cruel but honest. The screen painted my face in cold light. Over 2 years, 72,000 gone in clean, responsible lines. 22 for paradise I hadn't touched. 50 for everything else. Rent, utilities, a used car for my sister when hers died. At precisely the same moment her patience with buses did. The debits read like a biography I hadn't consented to. $800 here, car repair. $300 there, phone family plan. $200 auto pay to a landlord whose name I knew better than my ex-husband's therapist. Between the lines, me, staying late at the office to finish audits, shoving PTO requests to the bottom of a drawer because someone had to keep the lights on in a home that wasn't mine. The graph of my generosity looked like a city skyline, irregular, expensive, impressive to no one who lived inside it. I scrolled further back, past the trip, past the first winter after the divorce when I slept in my coat because the radiator took its time. There, 2 days before the Hawaii departure, a line item on my mother's account I hadn't noticed. $1,200 cash withdrawal, physically at a branch near the airport. A curl of unease tightened in me. I clicked the timestamp, then my messages. 3 a.m., same night, my sister Elaine had posted a photo to her story. Just the corner of a luggage tag with a lei peeking in, captioned with a palm tree emoji. I'd missed it in real time. I was on the phone then with Dad, talking him through setting up auto pay for his electric bill for the 4th time, listening to the pride leak out of his voice in little sighs. Fear dresses itself as love. I know that now. But when you're desperate for the idea of family to survive your divorce, you let it walk right in wearing your mother's coat and your father's shoes. You let it bill you. I scrolled through more entries. $500 emergency from Elaine with no explanation. $120 for a space heater because the one in their living room ate electricity like a monster. $900 for new furniture so they could entertain the church group they insisted kept them afloat. I remembered Ms. Judith Walsh's voice during my settlement, gentle but relentless. "You are generous to a fault, Tess. Your ex-attorney called you that." The phrase had felt like a compliment at the time. Tonight it tasted like a diagnosis. The radiator shuddered, coughed steam. I stood, walked to the window, and watched a man on the sidewalk pull his hat lower against the wind. Somewhere, a plow scraped rhythm into the street. On my desk, the printout of the Hawaii confirmation sat under a magnet shaped like a pineapple. I pulled it free and smoothed it flat on the coffee table, then began laying other papers on top. The car insurance I'd covered for Elaine, the rent transfers to my parents' landlord, the list of groceries I'd ordered for them when the pandemic made lines at the store feel like punishment. Paper over paper until I had a small city of proof. I didn't cry. Shame, maybe, warmed my face for a minute. Shame that I'd thought dollars could buy me back into a family unit that had decided I was a liability to their image. After the divorce, Mom had insisted I should keep a lower profile. People talk, she'd said, as if gossip were weather we had to dress for. Dad had tried to make pride out of my work. Our Tess, the money mind. But it never stuck when the bills piled and his self-worth hid behind my routing number. I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Boundaries. Then I clicked Compose and typed to Ms. Walsh, 9 a.m. tomorrow. Lockdown on all accounts. Two-factor on everything. New passwords. New alerts. My fingers moved without asking permission from my heart. Ms. Walsh replied at once. Of course, come in right at 9. We'll take care of you. The phrase made me sit back. Take care of you. I couldn't remember the last time anyone had offered that without handing me a bill. I stood, crossed to the coat rack, and pulled down the leather tote I use when I need to feel like someone who walks into rooms and changes outcomes. Bank statements printed, pay stubs, performance reviews noting, in tidy language, that my judgment is unflinching under pressure. I slipped them into a folder. On top, I placed the pineapple confirmation sheet like a perverse title page. The phone chimed, a text from Elaine. Rent due. Need $2K today. You're a lifesaver. Heart emoji. I stared at it, then laughed once, small and bitter. Only for family, she'd left unsaid. I typed, then deleted, typed again. I'm not a bank. I hit send before that softer part of me could compose a friendlier lie. My apartment vent rattled as the heat caught up. The clock on the stove ticked toward midnight. Somewhere deep, under the ache and the humiliation and the bruise of that sentence from my mother, a hard, bright calm settled. Not rage. Rage eats you from the inside and leaves your skeleton to argue with ghosts. This was what? Resolve. A ledger balancing itself. In the bathroom mirror, I didn't look like vengeance. I looked like someone laying down a burden. I braided my hair the way I do when I need my hands busy and my mind clear. And in that small motion, I imagined pulling tight everything they'd loosened in me with their need and their carelessness. When I came back, the laptop had dimmed. I woke it, opened the bank app, and scrolled to the section with my security settings. The checklist glowed. Device recognition, location alerts, transfer thresholds. I ticked boxes until the page bristled with protections. A small banner popped up. We've noticed 2 failed login attempts from an unfamiliar device in the past 48 hours. The IP traced to a coffee shop near my parents' apartment. My jaw tightened. Ms. Walsh would love this, in the way accountants love clean audit trails. I drafted a note for tomorrow. Cancel autopays, rent, insurance, phone, internet. New account numbers. And then, because the body doesn't forget, I added, call a locksmith about a new deadbolt and a camera. A house is just a box until you make it safe. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. I thought of the trip I would have taken if I'd been invited. Imagined my feet in warm water, a forgiving sky. I pictured my mother's mouth when she said only for family, lips pressed together like doors closing. I pictured my father's eyes flitting off screen, that soft, cowardly kindness that keeps worse things alive by starving the better thing in front of it. I thought of Elaine's unwavering belief that I existed to convert my pain into her comfort. I let myself feel it all for exactly 60 seconds. Then I pressed save on the folder. I texted Ms. Walsh one more time. I'll bring everything. She wrote back a thumbs up, then added, You're doing the right thing. Doing the right thing doesn't feel like a parade. It feels like tying your shoes for a very long walk. I washed the coffee cup I'd never needed to dirty but had, out of habit, a mug with a chip on the rim I always turned away from my mouth. I dried it and set it on the rack, chip facing forward like a small truth. Then I turned off the lamp, the room falling into a gentler dark, and wrote a single sentence on a sticky note that I stuck to my front door, so I'd see it before the morning. You don't buy love with invoices. When I finally lay down, the radiator sang its clanking lullaby. The snow softened outside, a white static that would be pretty if I were a different person, living a different life. In the next room, my printer hummed and spat out one last page, my appointment confirmation for 9 a.m., a banner at the bottom reading, "Two-factor authentication enabled." I left the page in the tray. Tomorrow I would walk into a bright glass office and close the gates around my life. Tonight I let the words echo just once, not to haunt me, but to harden me where I needed hardening, only for family. And then, out loud to the empty room, I gave myself the truer sentence. Only for me, now. I slept. The morning came brittle and bright, the kind of buffalo winter light that made every crack in the sidewalk look like it might swallow you whole. I carried my tote like armor as I pushed through the bank's revolving door. Ms. Judith Walsh's office was all glass and steel, neat stacks of folders lined with ruthless precision. She rose to greet me, warm handshake, cool eyes, the sort of woman who knew how to cradle numbers like fragile things and cut through lies like paper. "You came prepared," she said, tapping the bulging folder under my arm. I nodded, sliding into the chair across from her desk. "Lock everything down. Auto-pays, linked accounts, transfers. If someone sneezes near my money, I want to know about it." A faint smile ghosted her lips. "I'll make sure they need a crowbar to get through." We started with the obvious. Canceling the automatic rent payment to my parents' landlord, the $300 monthly car insurance for Elaine, the $200 phone bill, the internet, all of it. With every click, every confirmation email, I felt something uncoil inside me, like shackles being sawed through one link at a time. But the victory came with a sting. As Ms. Walsh scrolled, she frowned. "2 failed login attempts on your account in the last 48 hours, she murmured, swiveling the screen toward me. From a device at a cafe near Sycamore Street. I recognized the address. It was 2 blocks from my parents' apartment. My jaw clenched. "So it's begun." She met my eyes. This is usually the first sign. They push boundaries quietly before they push them loud. "You're not wrong to be here, Tess." For a flicker, guilt tried to surface. The memory of my father once asking me in a voice cracked with shame, "You'll keep the lights on, won't you?" And me, promising, always promising. But then the words rang again in my head, only for family. Family had closed the door. They had named me a burden. That promise had already been broken. It just hadn't been me who broke it. We finalized everything. New 2-factor authentication, fresh codes, account alerts tied directly to my phone. The printer spat page after page, the air filling with the smell of warm ink and quiet resolve. When I signed the last form, Ms. Walsh placed her pen down carefully. "You're taking control. That isn't easy." "I don't think I've ever had control," I admitted, surprising myself with the truth. Her eyes softened. "Then you're starting today." I left the bank with the folder tucked under my arm, the wind biting my cheeks, like it wanted me to remember what cold felt like when you faced it head on. Back at my apartment, I set the folder down on the counter and dialed the hardware store. "I need a new deadbolt and a camera system installed today. Motion activated, cloud storage, the works." The clerk didn't even blink, his voice gruff but efficient. "We'll send Mike over by noon. Best guy we've got." "Make it fast," I said. By the time I hung up, my phone buzzed again. A message from Elaine. "Rent still due. $2K. Need it now. You don't want to see Dad upset." I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I typed back, steady fingers on glass. "Tell Dad to keep his lights on without me. I'm done." Send. No shaking hands this time. When Mike showed up, toolbox in hand, he didn't ask questions. Just nodded at the old lock, replaced it with a deadbolt that gleamed like a secret I could trust, and mounted a small red-eyed camera above the door. "This one records straight to the cloud," he said, showing me the feed on my phone. "Anyone tries anything, you'll know before they do." I signed the invoice and handed it back. "Thanks." He tipped his cap. "Lock 'em out, whoever they are." By the time he left, the camera's little light blinked steady, watching over the hallway. I sat down, stared at my phone, and for the first time in years, felt a strange kind of quiet. Not the silence of being excluded, not the emptiness of giving until I was hollow. This was the silence of protection, of boundaries, of a door that only opened when I chose. And yet, beneath that calm, I felt it coming. My family wouldn't let this end quietly. The knock would come. The storm would gather. And this time, I wouldn't flinch. It didn't take long. 2 days after the locks clicked into place, I woke to the sound of tires grinding in the snow outside. Through the new camera feed on my phone, I saw them. My mother's heavy coat, my father's hunched shoulders, Elaine's scarf bright against the gray morning, and behind them, a man in a black overcoat with a leather briefcase. They hadn't even texted, they'd brought backup. The doorbell buzzed, insistent, a sound that tried to claim urgency. I let it ring once more, then opened the door just wide enough to face them. "Tess," Elaine began, her tone syrupy, the same one she'd used at 16 when she asked me to cover for her sneaking out. "We need to talk." Behind her, the man stepped forward, extending a hand I didn't take. "Thomas Hayes, counsel for your family." His voice was clipped, rehearsed. "Ms. Marlo, they're concerned about your recent financial decisions." "Financial decisions?" I echoed, letting the words taste bitter in my mouth. My mother crossed her arms. "You've always taken care of us. Rent, groceries, bills. It's not just generosity, Tess. It's obligation." Elaine's smile thinned. "You can't just stop. We're family. You owe us." My father looked everywhere but at me, his boots leaving small wet patches on the floor just inside the threshold. He didn't even notice. "Be reasonable," he muttered, the phrase he always used when he meant give in quietly. Hayes placed his briefcase on the step between us, like a dealer laying down his cards. "We're prepared to discuss this formally if necessary. Legal avenues are available." For a moment, the weight of it pressed against me. Their bodies in the hall, their voices thick with practiced guilt, the lawyer's presence turning my living room into a courtroom. Old reflexes screamed at me to fold, to protect, to save. But the red LED above the door blinked calmly, recording every word. I let its steady pulse anchor me. I straightened. "I don't owe you anything," I said. My voice was quieter than theirs, but it cut sharper for it. "You made that clear when you left me out of Hawaii. When you laughed in the face of the $72,000 I poured into you. You made me your ATM, not your daughter." Elaine's mask slipped, her voice snapping. "Don't be selfish. You wouldn't even have that money if it weren't for—" "For what?" I interrupted. "For my job? For the overtime I bled through while you sent me texts with heart emojis attached to rent requests? You didn't earn any of it. You just assumed I'd hand it over." Mr. Hayes raised a hand, smooth as silk. "Ms. Marlo, if you prefer, we can let the courts decide. Your family is prepared to petition for protective control of your assets, for everyone's best interest." There it was, the threat dressed in legalese. I stepped back, hand on the edge of the door. "Then take it to court. This conversation is over." I shut the door before their shock could harden into another demand. The lock turned beneath my hand with a satisfying finality, a click louder than any argument. Through the door, their voices rose, Elaine's shrill, my mother's pleading, Hayes's low murmur. My father's silence weighed heavier than any words. I didn't listen. Instead, I turned to the camera feed, watching them argue among themselves on the snowy stoop. Elaine's gestures were wild, Mom's face pinched, Hayes trying to corral them into composure. I set my phone down, heart pounding, but steady. They could bring their lawyer, their accusations, their demands, but I wasn't opening that door again. The storm had arrived, just as I knew it would, and I was ready to fight. The storm didn't retreat, it regrouped. 3 nights later, as I was sorting through work papers at my kitchen table, the camera app pinged. Not Elaine this time. A woman in a gray wool coat stood outside, clipboard pressed against her chest, breath clouding in the cold. Professional, not familial. When I opened the door, she offered a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Miss Marlo, I'm Sarah Coleman from Family and Protective Services. May I come in?" My stomach tightened. They'd actually done it. "Of course," I said, keeping my tone even as I stepped aside. The camera above blinked red, documenting everything. She perched on my sofa, pulling out a notepad. "I've received a report expressing concern about your recent behavior. Financial instability, impulsive decisions affecting your family's welfare. We need to assess your well-being." My sister's fingerprints were all over it. Elaine had finally found a way to weaponize bureaucracy. I didn't argue. Instead, I walked to the counter and picked up the folder I'd assembled. After meeting Robert Lawson, the lawyer Janet recommended, employment reviews, pay stubs, bank statements, even the evaluation Dr. Clean had run as a precaution. I set them down in front of Ms. Coleman like evidence in a trial. She flipped through carefully. 10 years at the same firm, she murmured, scanning the performance reviews. Consistent promotions, stable deposits, no overdrafts. Her pen moved across the page. Her brow softened. This doesn't reflect the claims in the report. I sat across from her, hands folded, voice calm. My sister is upset because I stopped paying her bills. This isn't about my competency. It's about control. For a moment, she studied me, not just the papers, but my eyes, my posture, the steadiness of my tone. Then she nodded slowly. I'll need to verify with your employer and your bank, but yes, this is thorough. Before I could exhale fully, my phone buzzed. Robert Lawson's name lit the screen. I put him on speaker. Mr. Lawson, I said, Ms. Coleman is here regarding a report filed by my family. His voice came crisp, steady, filling the room like a safety net. Ms. Coleman, I represent Ms. Marlo. I'd like to note that this is part of a larger pattern of harassment stemming from a financial guardianship petition already filed by Thomas Hayes. There was a pause. Ms. Coleman glanced up from her notes. I'll include that context in my report. Good, Lawson said. Please note for the record, my client is competent, employed, financially responsible, and the report appears retaliatory in nature. Ms. Coleman closed her notepad. Understood. She rose, gathering her things. Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Marlo. I'll finalize my assessment after verifications, but I don't see grounds for concern here. When the door shut behind her, I leaned back, breath leaving me in a long, shaky rush. The apartment felt suddenly smaller, like the walls had heard too much. I texted Janet. They sent a social worker. I held the line. Her reply came fast. Proud of you. Meet us at the cafe. You shouldn't carry this alone. 10 minutes later, I was at a corner table, Martha and Lois flanking me, Evelyn sipping tea with quiet eyes. I told them everything. The report, the visit, Elaine's calculated strike. Martha squeezed my hand. They're trying to break you down, Tess. Don't let them. Lois leaned forward, firm. You've got your job, your records, your sanity. They've got gossip and desperation. Who do you think a judge will believe? Even Evelyn, usually reserved, looked at me with surprising steel. You're not crazy. You're just done being used. That scares them. The knot in my chest loosened a little under their words. Outside, snow drifted against the cafe windows. Inside, I felt, for the first time in weeks, like the ground beneath me wasn't shifting. But as I sipped my coffee, one thought cut through the warmth of their support. If Elaine was willing to drag me through social services, what would she try next? The answer came 3 weeks later, inside a cold, wood-paneled courtroom. The Buffalo courthouse smelled faintly of polish and old paper. I sat beside Robert Lawson at the defense table, my folder of evidence clutched like a lifeline. Across the aisle, Elaine and my father sat stiffly with Thomas Hayes, their lawyer. My mother wasn't there, perhaps shame, perhaps strategy. Elaine's face was set in studied grief, like she was auditioning for a part. My father stared down at his hands, fingers interlaced too tightly. Judge William Carter entered, robes heavy, voice steady. We're here on the matter of Marlo versus Marlo, petition for guardianship of the respondent's financial estate. The words tasted bitter even as they echoed in the room. Guardianship of my life, of my choices. Hayes rose first, smooth as always. Your Honor, Ms. Marlo's recent actions, cutting off financial support, canceling auto pays, refusing reasonable requests, demonstrate instability and erratic decision-making. Her family has relied on her for years. Suddenly, withdrawing this support has placed them in hardship. We seek to protect both her and them by appointing guardianship. He motioned toward Elaine. She took the stand, clutching a tissue like a prop. Tess has always been generous, she began, voice trembling just enough. But lately, she's changed, shutting us out, acting cold, refusing to help. It's not like her. We're worried she's not thinking clearly. My stomach twisted, but I kept my face calm. Next, my father spoke, voice rough as gravel. She's not herself. She's always been dependable. Now, she's angry, cutting ties. We don't know why. We just want to protect her. Protect, that word again, twisted until it meant control. Hayes even dragged in witnesses. A neighbor of Elaine's who claimed she'd heard Tess stopped helping out of nowhere, and a coworker of my father's who muttered vague gossip. Robert objected. Hearsay. Judge Carter sustained, striking most of it from the record. But the attempt was clear. Paint me unstable, a woman unraveling. Then it was our turn. Robert called Dr. Barbara Clean, the psychiatrist who'd evaluated me after the social worker's visit. She sat poised, professional, her report in hand. Ms. Marlo is fully competent, Dr. Clean testified. She's articulate, manages a demanding job, demonstrates rational financial decision-making. My assessment found no signs of erratic behavior. Her choices are consistent with setting healthy boundaries. Hayes tried to poke holes, asking about my divorce, about stress. Dr. Clean didn't flinch. Stress is not incapacity, she said firmly. Then it was me. I walked to the stand, folder in hand, and looked directly at Judge Carter. My voice was steady, though my pulse thudded in my ears. For years, I supported my family. $72,000. Documented here. Rent, utilities, groceries, even a car for my sister. I gave because I thought love was measured in sacrifice. But when they excluded me from the Hawaii trip I paid for, I realized I wasn't family to them. I was a bank account. I laid out my performance reviews, pay stubs, bank records, proof of stability, not chaos. I showed the judge the failed login attempts from the cafe near my parents' apartment, the social worker's report clearing me, even Elaine's late-night messages demanding rent money like clockwork. I didn't cut them off to be cruel, I said, my throat tight but my words sharp. I did it to survive. Boundaries aren't instability, they're self-preservation. The courtroom was silent, except for the scratch of the judge's pen. Robert closed with calm finality. The petitioners offer hearsay and resentment. The respondent offers evidence, evaluations, and a clear record. This is not incapacity, Your Honor. This is independence. Hayes countered with polished rhetoric, but it fell flat against the paper mountain we'd built. When Judge Carter returned from recess, the room held its breath. The petitioners, he said slowly, have failed to provide credible evidence that Ms. Marlo is unfit to manage her finances. On the contrary, her documentation and professional evaluation demonstrate sound judgment. The petition is dismissed. The gavel's crack felt like thunder rolling out from under my ribs. Elaine's face drained of color. My father looked at me, not with anger, but with something worse, bewilderment, as though he couldn't comprehend the daughter who no longer bent. Hayes shuffled his papers quickly, already retreating. Robert leaned close, voice low. You did it. It's over. As I stepped out into the winter air, the courthouse behind me, I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. The storm hadn't destroyed me. It had proven me. 3 months later, the storm was memory, not forecast. I stood in a new apartment high above the Buffalo streets, sunlight spilling across clean white walls. The view stretched farther than my old life ever had. City lights at night, like scattered promises, morning skies uncluttered by guilt. I'd left the cramped space with its shadows of late-night demands and doorbell confrontations. This place felt like oxygen. On the counter, a bowl of flour and eggs waited. Tuesday nights were for cooking class now, a ritual I'd never given myself permission to try before. My risotto was still hit or miss, but my marinara was respectable. The instructor, Linda, had laughed when I admitted I used to think dinners were just calories eaten between crises. You're learning to taste again, she said. She was right. Travel brochures lay spread across my dining table. Maine's rocky coast, Italy's golden vineyards. I circled destinations with a pen, the ink curling like a secret I wasn't ashamed to keep. For once, the money I saved was mine to spend on joy, not rescue. Word of my family trickled in sideways, through acquaintances too polite not to mention it. Elaine juggling 2 jobs, cashier by day, waitress by night. My parents in a worn apartment on the edge of the city, no property, no status. I felt a brief pang, remembering the years I fought to keep them afloat. But it passed. Choices have consequences. Mine had freed me. Theirs had shackled them. At my desk sat a journal, half filled since the trial. That evening, I opened it and wrote, I spent years trying to earn love with dollars. What I bought was silence. What I found, once I stopped, was myself. I taped the last page with numbers scrawled across it. Not bank balances, not rent checks, but a tally of everything I'd given. $72,000. Not as an invoice, as a gravestone. A reminder of a role I'd buried. I closed the book and glanced at the framed photo on my shelf, me with flour on my hands in class, laughing so hard the picture blurred. I'd asked Janet to take it, wanting proof I could look like that. The door buzzed. It was Martha and Lois, with Evelyn trailing behind, arms full of wine and pastries. We toasted at the window, city lights glittering below. To new beginnings, Lois said, raising her glass. To no longer being someone's safety net, Martha added. Evelyn, quiet but certain, smiled. To finally being free. Our glasses clinked, the sound clear, unburdened. Later, alone, I set a sticky note above my desk where the numbers used to hang. Generosity without boundaries is self-erasure. I whispered it once, not bitter, not triumphant, just true. And then I opened a brochure to Tuscany, running my fingers over the vineyards like they were already mine to walk, because they were.